So we got that '39 Ford, and we were pretty excited. And then just before we moved to Holman, about 1940, at the end of '46, I guess, Dad was tired of farming that we call the poor land up at the Billy place, because that land was up on the hill, and he wanted to go down to the river bottom where the river had overflowed in some areas down there, and the soil was just a lot better. And the cotton would grow about twice as tall, and corn and all that. And so he went to town, and Mr. Brandt, who is my good classmate, high school classmate, Buddy Brandt's dad, well, he had a blacksmith shop where they hammered out the plows and resharpened them and things for the farmers, and did a little welding and things like that, and odds and ends. And he took up a J.I. Case dealership, which is out of Racine, Wisconsin. And Case tractors were kind of foreign down here, and didn't know much about them. But anyhow, Mom and they were very good friends, and most of the people up there had Farmalls and John Deeres, and a few Averys, and a few Minneapolis Molines, a few Olivers, but not the Cases. Case tractors were not that popular down here. Anyhow, he bought a brand new Case tractor, model VAC, V as in Victor, even had lights on it. And of course, old 6-volt batteries. And we bought that tractor and moved the Holman to the river bottom. And we were between Wyman and LaGrange, and the river bottom land was about 3 miles from our house. We had to go down to where Dad had the farm, and most of it was old Johnson grass fields, and Mr. Lauderstein, the guy in Weimar, owned it. He had that dry goods store there, and a Jewish fella. And it was just old hay meadows, but the land was good, but clearing all that Johnson grass and all that stuff out of there was just miserable. And my dad took that tractor and did a lot of that work, and planted the crops, and he'd get out there, and because the weeds would come up, we could plow and take care of most of the weeds, but right where the plants were, the weeds would come up, and you'd have to hand chop them out, because you couldn't cut the plows so close that they cut the weeds, and you cut down your corn or your cotton or whatever. And so my poor dad just chopped out there. I chopped out there too, but he chopped every day. Mom chopped a little bit, but he stayed in the fields. And we took care of most things at the house. So anyway, the soil was, the land was kind of unlevel in some spots, and the J.I. Case cultivators, the plows in the back, it was on a straight beam, and if one end of the beam would come up, well, then this plow would come out, and this one would go down deep, and so it was just my dad just didn't, it was a pain. He just couldn't figure, he just didn't like that. Which I understand, it wasn't working as good. I don't know if they weren't used to that up there where they built those tractors or what. But anyhow, Farmall had them spring-loaded, and they were individual. They came out on individual deals where they weren't on a straight beam, and they would more or less adjust themselves to the soil. To the landscape. And so my dad went to town and explained that to Mr. Brandt. And Mr. Brandt had just taken in a Farmall H, was actually a little bit bigger tractor than we had, and so they worked out a trade for this next coming year, so my dad could have that Farmall, and he thought he would like that better, which he did. And so we got that formal, and we used it over in at the river bottom. But a drought came that year, the second year, and we didn't make much. And it was tough because we were counting on that crop. Because we did fairly well the first year, even though it was so much work. But this next year we just didn't have enough rain, and things just didn't work out very good. And the little house we rented there, it had been added on to a few times, and the last time I added it on to, for some reason, it had a step down in from where the stove and the eating area was, and one bedroom and whatever. It stepped down, and it had about a 6-inch step down, and was one bedroom in. Another room was added on over there, and my dad came in and stood in that door, and he was just standing in that door, leaning up against that door, and I was sitting on the end of the bed there, and my mom was pretty sure was sitting in a chair, and my dad, it's the first time I ever saw him cry. I was about in that 8th grade. And he stood in that door, and tears was running down his eyes, and he said, he called my mom Mari. He said, "Mari, I love farming, and it's about the only thing I can do. But I can't do it anymore. I just can't do it anymore, and I've got to, I've just got to see if I can't find something else. I got to give up farming. I just can't do it anymore." And like I said, it was a very sad day, because that's the first time I ever saw my dad cry, and even though I was young, I felt in his heart that he was heartbroken, because that was his life, was farming, or trying to farm. So while I had that on my mind, I just wanted to say that so I didn't forget that, because that was a big big decision on his part, and it turned out to be the best decision, and I'll get to that a little bit later. So, but yeah, we finished out that year, and I guess I went to the midterm of my freshman year at LaGrange High School. But getting back to moving to Holman, where we had released this sharecrop down there in Holman. I'm calling it Holman because that's where the river bottom was. Had to walk about 2 miles down all the roads are muddy back then to school, and I walked to school, and I had some neighbors down the road, David Hilcher, Warner Hilcher, and Steve Urban, and we kind of walked together down there and waited for the school bus. And the school bus route was gravel. That started putting gravel around. That's where the school bus route, so the school bus could go mostly. And Warren and David were probably, one was about a junior and one was about a senior, big old strong country boys and good boys. I mean, I knew them down here in Houston. They were just good friends. And in fact, Warner was my CPA, just good people, and their parents were so good, and we they was, like I said, strong as a mule. And I don't know, for some reason back in those days, some of the bigger boys would get behind you and they'd grab you and squeeze you and hold your chest in. You couldn't breathe. And that was kind of a game, I guess. I don't know. And so they'd do that to me every now and then because I couldn't resist. And I mean, they were my friends too. I knew they were playing, but one day, one of them got carried away too much, and I passed out. It scared them to death. It kind of scared me too, because I was out just like that. I couldn't breathe if they held my breath too long, and they were shaking me. And all I remember was they saying, "Hey, the school bus is coming! The school bus is coming! And get up!" But anyway, I made it up, and so that's what happened. Another thing, what they did back in those days, somebody would get behind somebody, and this was a little dangerous, but get behind somebody just crawl behind them all fours, put your hands down, and then somebody would come up in the front and just push you, and you'd just go kabloom, flat over on your back. I mean, things like that. But anyhow, when I got to LaGrange, I just want you to understand that unless you lived it, you got to understand, I came from a school that had about 10, 12, 14 kids in the beginning, down to 5 kids when I left, and we didn't have anything to play with or do nothing, and no communication skills other than just talking. I got to LaGrange, and there was about 25 kids just in the 7th grade, midterm, and I was so intimidated, I didn't know what to do with myself. I really was. And they would be out there playing volleyball and stuff, and girls and boys would be playing volleyball together and softball together, and I was so intimidated, and I was embarrassed because I just didn't, and they would come over, someone would come over, I'd stand off to the side and under a tree or something over there, and I'd sit on the side, and they'd come and say, why don't you come play with us? And I said, nah, not feeling too good. I'd always make up some kind of excuse. And this went on all my 2 years over at LaGrange. I just didn't participate in anything because I was really so embarrassed. Now, in my first half of my freshman year, we played touch football quite a bit, and I started participating in that. But the first year or so, it was tough. I didn't know what to do.